Hey, I'm Kevin Farley, and you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on Gogoodman.com.au.
What's the earliest memory you have of comedy having an effect on you? Was the Farley household always funny? And I know you got into comedy a little bit later in life. So what's the earliest memory you have of comedy?
You know what? I think being a professional comedian was probably in my mid to late 20s. I went down to Second City in Chicago, and I saw my brother perform on stage. And that's where I really felt like the first time I ever wanted to do comedy, because I saw Second City's performance, and I was really enthralled by how great the live theater was, and how sketch comedy can be so entertaining, you know.
Did you watch shows like...
I loved it.
Did you watch shows like The Tonight Show or Saturday Night Live growing up?
I did. I watched Saturday Night Live all the time, and The Tonight Show too. I watched both of those. I used to watch Carol Burnett growing up. I used to watch, Laugh-In, some of the old good ones. But yeah, I always enjoyed comedians.
You originally didn't have an interest...
I wanted to be one.
You originally didn't have an interest in comedy or show business, but you and your two brothers, either side of you, all ended up in show business. What's the order of who left Wisconsin and went to Chicago between you, Chris, and John?
Well, Chris went first when he was younger, and then followed by John. And I was the last one to go down to Chicago and study comedy. And so, but Chris was the trailblazer in the house, and he kind of did it before anybody.
So was John following him, or did John have his own ideas of the entertainment industry, or was it all comedy-based?
I think it was all comedy-based, you know. I think he wanted to do comedy like I did and Chris did. So we never were dramatic actors that way. We always wanted to do comedy.
Once in Chicago, you started studying at Second City, which you mentioned. Can you tell me about your memories of the venue, the comedy scene in general in that city, and who your first few comedy friends were? Because I've interviewed a couple of people that have studied at Second City, and they said just the amount of people that have gone through that place before them, it just blows their mind, and that's why they love it there. And the comedy scene around Chicago pays tribute to everyone that's been through there.
Yeah, and I think when I was there, I wasn't working with him, but Adam McKay was on stage, and I used to watch him perform. Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, Rachel Dratch, Scott Adsit. They were just brilliant, and I would watch them perform all the time, and I really admired them.
Do you remember who your first couple of comedy friends were?
Yeah, I think I was good friends with, back then, David Pompey. These are guys that are still doing stand-up. I was friends with Tina Fey and a lot of those guys. You know, Matt Besser, who started UCB. I was friends with him. Yeah, a lot of those guys, and they all went to L.A., and we still hung out in L.A. Pat Finn was a good friend of mine. Neil Flynn, who's on In the Middle. Yeah, I was friends with those guys. And also, later I became friends with David Spade, Norm Macdonald, Adam Sandler. I got to be friends with them.
So do you remember much about your first, your first instinct or your first interpretation of Chicago when you got there and the comedy scene? Was it something that you were excited to get into?
Yeah, I was, because there was a guy named Del Close and Sharna Halpern who ran Improv Olympic, and I wanted to get involved with them because I thought they were really creative. And I know my brother had worked with them, so I wanted to study underneath those guys. I thought they had a lot to offer. And they did. And to this day, Improv Olympic in Chicago is one of the biggest improv theaters in the world. And I learned a lot from both of them. They were very instrumental in my career.
Did you learn about stand-up as well as improv in Chicago?
I learned about stand-up in Chicago, yeah, but I never really was interested in doing it until maybe 5 years ago.
Ah.
I never had an interest in doing stand-up till 5 years ago, yeah. I just thought it was too difficult and the road was hard. And
so then what changed?
I don't know, I didn't think I could do it.
What changed 5 years ago?
I think I was experimenting and looking for new things to do. So I would go to the Comedy Store and work out an act, you know. And I put together an act, put together an hour. And since then, I've been just changing it and working it, and I've really enjoyed it.
Was there pressure on you to progress to LA when you were in Chicago? How long did you spend in Chicago?
I was there like 94, 5, and 6, and then I moved to LA in 97.
Was there pressure on you to make that move to LA?
I think there was, because I had an audition for a sitcom, and I remember getting it. So I was flying back and forth, and then finally they said, why don't you just move out and we can start shooting the sitcom. So there was some pressure to move out to LA, yeah.
When you got to Hollywood, you appeared in a couple of Chris's movies, then you started getting into the sitcom scene. I know there was a stand-up boom in the 80s and a sitcom boom in the 90s, which is my era. Did you hit the peak of the sitcom boom when you got to LA, or did you feel like you just missed out on it towards the end of the 90s?
No, I think, yeah, well, that kind of boom, yeah, I definitely missed out on it. But there was plenty of work all the time, and I managed to get by. Yeah, so I didn't, make any of the really big ones, but I was always working, and I've been working consistently since then, so I'm grateful for that.
Just Shoot, that's pretty much my next question. Just Shoot Me, That 70s Show, and Third Rock from the Sun were the three big sitcoms you cameoed on, but you also got into quite a few movies as well, some of Adam Sandler's movies too. So from 94, you really just started working and didn't stop, or even, 97. So when you moved to LA, was that a surprise to you? On paper, it looks like a consistent, flowing, fun career so far. Is that what it's felt like so far?
Well, I mean, I've never been, I've only had a few like reoccurring things, but I've mainly been getting steady work kind of like that for my whole career. So, but it hasn't been like a steady job, one job. I've been all over the board for years. So but I've always been consistent working. So I'm grateful for that.
And now, does stand-up give you another outlet to work when you haven't got an audition or haven't got a role?
Yeah. That's what I really like about stand-up. It's kind of like something for me to do while I look for other roles. I can go out and do it and come back and do a TV show if I want or whatever, and put the stand-up on the back burner if I want,
In saying that, you have worked with a vast range of comedians like David Spade, Larry David, Adam Sandler, Bill Burr on F is for Family. Do you get to see how each comedian thinks and goes about their business? Is that an interesting experience for you? I mean, some comedians are more comfortable being outspoken like Bill Burr, whereas Adam Sandler's content can be funny but a bit more immature. Do you get to see that difference when you're working with them and then now put it into your stand-up and figure out what kind of stand-up comic you want to be?
Yeah, I learned from, I went out on the road with Norm Macdonald earlier in my career, my stand-up career, and I learned a lot from Norm on how to craft a show, how to craft a joke. And so I was very grateful for Norm for that. And Spade, I watched, he's a very hard worker. He has his own way of doing things. And Sandler, of course, is an amazing workaholic. He's always working, and he's always doing new stuff. So each one of those guys brings their own talent, and I've learned from every one of them. I've been very grateful to be around them and call them as friends.
when you can call them friends, is it strange to see that Bill Burr is so outgoing, yet Adam Sandler's character can be sometimes a little bit shyer on screen? Is that like a vast difference for you when you're that close to them?
Well, yeah, they're two very different people. They're two different styles. You know, Bill is a very angry gentleman, and Adam's kind of a nicer guy that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're very different, but they both attack comedy the same way, and they really go for the joke, and they really are committed performers.
So which way do you feel you swing? Do you feel you're a bit more outgoing, or do you feel... I mean, you've got that improv side behind you as well, so that would help you being a bit more outgoing as well as a stand-up.
Right. I'm more outgoing. I speak my mind on stage. I'm not like... I don't play an instrument like Adam, even though I wish I did. But I'm just more bombastic. Try to be a little bombastic at times, but yet controlled. I'm not as loud as Bill Burr, but I have my moments on stage.
I've watched a few clips, don't worry. That's good.
Yeah.
In the comedy industry, what's the difference between a friend and an acquaintance? Is there a big gap? Because I know a lot of these comedians, they're all friends and they've all crossed paths, but how many can you actually call friends, and how many just people you've crossed paths or worked with?
Well, I think I'm good friends with David Spade, Norm Macdonald. Those guys are my good friends. Sandler's a good friend. I just think that, it's nice to have real friends in show business because, acquaintances are a dime a dozen. So it's nice to have good friends.
You've experienced comedy in all formats: stand-up, sitcoms, movies, music videos. I saw you in Nickelback's this afternoon. I actually looked that up again to see where you were and found you. Cartoons. Sometimes the comedy relies on dialogue. Sometimes there's no dialogue. What's your preferred medium for comedy, and do they all require similar skills?
Well, I always like dialogue. I like to execute dialogue. I'm more of a comedic actor than I am a real joke teller. So I would prefer to get a script and act it, rather than not say anything or be just like flat out, a talking head. I'm more of an actor than anything else.
You've experienced the highs in being in classic comedies, and as you said, constantly working. I'm guessing that's the main part of trying to be a comedian or a comic actor, is trying to work consistently over a long career. And you've also experienced the lows, obviously, with your brother, and there's a lot of that in the entertainment industry and in the comedy industry as well, whether it be related to mental health, addiction, or overindulgence, or something else. And with it being in public, it always feels like it's more prevalent in the entertainment industry when it may not be. It's just that it's in the media a lot. So I want to ask, what if we stick to comedy specifically, what's kept your love of comedy so strong over the years when you've experienced both ends of the spectrum?
Well, I think that, first of all, I don't think the entertainment industry is more susceptible to abuse of substance abuse. I think it's all in all industries.
It's in the media a lot more than it is in the blue-collar industries. Yeah.
Right. So I don't think that it's anything more. I just think it's in the media more. And I think the way you keep your head about it, whether you're an accountant or whether you're an actor, is to make sure you stay in the here and now, and you make sure you stay humble, and you make sure you have a good perspective on life, and not let anything get too big or get too small. Try to keep it right where it is. Moderate.
Can I ask, did comedy help you keep that balance?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to look at something and turn it on its head and laugh at it, I think that's a really good tool to use in life in general, because that keeps you from going crazy and picking up a bottle or using a substance to sort of get you through life. If you can look at life and turn it on its head and laugh at it, that's a valuable tool. So I'm grateful for comedy for giving me that.
And what are you working on at the moment? Can we see? I know you've been in a lot of things, and I have a bit of a quote that I wrote that I want to read after this question. But yeah. So what have you got coming up? Do you have many projects coming up, or are you traveling a lot at the moment?
Well, I do a couple of voiceovers on the Netflix show F is for Family, and I also have a podcast out called Kevin Farley on the Road, which is on iTunes. And then I'll do stand-up right now.
Right, yeah. So many comedians have podcasts. What do you like about the podcast?
Well, my podcast is about being on the road, and I interview different comics on the road. So that's what my podcast is about. It's pretty simple, but I love doing it.
And where can people find you? Are you a social media guy?
Yeah, Kev Farles at my Instagram, Kev as in Victor, F as in Frank, ARLS at Instagram. I'm Kevin Farley on Twitter and Kevin Farley on Facebook. Is
social media something you've grown to love, or do you have a love-hate relationship with it, like a lot of people do? I think I have a love-hate relationship with it because I like to promote my work. But I don't like it for relationships in general. I don't think people should be on it if they're in a relationship. But I do like to promote my work. Kevin, I've subconsciously seen a lot of your movies and shows and video clips over the years, so now I'm going to consciously watch the rest. I'll listen out for F is for Family as well. I absolutely love that show, and if you ever come to Melbourne, I'll buy the first tickets. So thank you very much for giving me some of your time today. Yeah, thank you.